The ice fields stretched endlessly across the mining moon's surface, broken only by jagged rocks and abandoned equipment. Owen Carter pulled his thermal suit tighter as wind screamed past his helmet. His scanner beeped steadily, following the distress beacon that had appeared 3 hours ago. Most salvage operators ignored signals this far out in the dead zones, but Owen had learned that forgotten places sometimes held the best finds. The beacon led him to a canyon carved deep into the moon's crust. At the bottom, half buried in frozen methane snow, lay a ship unlike anything Owen had seen before. Its hull was organic-looking, covered in overlapping plates that reminded him of reptile scales. Scorch marks and deep gashes told the story of a violent crash. The vessel was dying, its power core flickering like a fading heartbeat. Owen activated his cutting torch and worked on the sealed hatch. Metal screamed as he pried it open. Warm air rushed out, fogging his visor instantly. He stepped inside, his headlamp cutting through the darkness. The interior was a mess of broken equipment and shattered crystal panels. Blue blood splattered the walls, still liquid despite the cold outside. Then he heard it, a sound that made his chest tighten. Soft chirping, desperate and afraid. Owen followed the noise through twisted corridors until he reached what looked like a cargo hold. His light fell on something that stopped him cold, that a massive creature lay in the center of the room. It looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, but real and dying. Scales the color of deep ocean water covered its body. Wings with torn membranes spread across the floor. The creature's breathing came in shallow gasps, each one weaker than the last. Around her body, 3 small forms huddled close, making those heartbreaking chirping sounds. The babies were no bigger than house cats. Their scales hadn't hardened yet, showing soft colors of blue, gray, and copper. They pressed against their mother, trying to wake her with gentle nudges of their snouts. The largest one, colored pale blue, looked up at Owen with eyes full of ancient intelligence and desperate hope. The mother dragon stirred. Her massive head lifted slightly, those enormous eyes focusing on Owen. He saw pain there, and something else. Determination. She made a low rumbling sound, and a broken device on the wall flickered to life. A translator, damaged but still working. Mercy. The device crackled in broken human language. The dragon's voice was like distant thunder. Mercy for them. She used one weakening claw to push the babies toward Owen. They stumbled forward, chirping louder now, confused and scared. The blue one reached Owen's boot and wrapped tiny claws around it, looking up at him with pleading eyes. Please, the mother's voice came again, fainter now. Save my children. The war. Cannot. Protect them. Owen knelt down slowly, his mind racing. He had no idea what these creatures were or how to care for them. Every instinct told him to call the authorities and let professionals handle this. But those tiny faces staring up at him, those desperate chirps, the mother using her last moments to beg for their lives. He couldn't walk away. I'll try, Owen said, knowing the translator probably still worked. I promise I'll try. The dragon's eyes closed. A deep rumble came from her chest, almost like a purr of relief. Then her breathing stopped. The great body went still. The babies seemed to understand immediately. Their chirps turned into wails that echoed through the dead ship. The sound was so full of grief that Owen felt tears on his own cheeks. The 3 hatchlings crowded together, shaking. Owen reached out slowly, letting them see his gloved hand. The blue one sniffed it cautiously, then pressed its head against his palm. The gray one, the middle-sized, watched him with suspicious eyes, but didn't pull away when he gently touched its back. The smallest, colored like old copper, buried itself between its siblings, too scared to even look at him. Owen activated his communicator. Ship, I need thermal containers and the emergency medical kit brought to my location immediately. His ship's AI responded with concern. Owen, your bio readings show elevated stress. Are you injured? Negative. But I'm bringing passengers aboard. 3 of them. Juveniles. Possibly orphaned. Species identification required for proper environmental controls. Owen looked at the dead mother, then at the babies clustered around his knees. Unknown. Reptilian. Dragon-like. Just get the containers here now. He spent the next hour carefully examining the crashed ship's database. Most of it was corrupted, but he found fragments. The species was called Dravik. The mother's name had been Soral. She was fleeing something called the Burning Wars. The rest was lost to damaged memory cores. The babies grew colder as the ship's dying power finally gave out. Owen made his decision. He carefully scooped up all 3 hatchlings, holding them against his chest where his suit generated the most heat. They were surprisingly light, their bodies trembling. The blue one made a soft sound, almost a coo, and settled against him. The gray one's suspicion faded as warmth seeped into its scales. Even the copper hatchling peeked out, its tiny eyes blinking up at Owen. "All right, little ones," Owen said softly as he carried them toward his ship. "I don't know what I'm doing, but your mother trusted me. That has to count for something." Behind him, the crashed vessel groaned as ice claimed it. Owen didn't look back. He focused on the 3 lives depending on him now, their chirps growing quieter as they finally felt safe. Whatever came next, whatever laws he was breaking or dangers he was inviting, didn't matter. Those babies needed him. And Owen Carter had never been good at walking away from someone who needed help. Owen's ship hummed with nervous energy as he laid the 3 hatchlings in the medical bay. He had cranked the temperature up to match what he'd found in the crashed vessel, turning the small room into a sauna. Sweat dripped down his face as he watched the babies huddle together on the padded examination table. The ship's AI, which Owen had named Betty years ago out of loneliness, spoke with obvious concern. "Owen, I must inform you that interfering with Dravik is a Class 3 galactic violation. The species is protected under the Apex Predator Conservation Act. They're babies, Betty. I can't just let them die. Dravik hatchlings are statistically more dangerous than adult humans. Their bite force can crush bone even at this age." Owen looked at the 3 trembling creatures. The blue one had fallen asleep against its siblings, making tiny snoring sounds. The gray one watched him with exhausted eyes. The copper hatchling had finally stopped shaking. "They don't look very dangerous right now. Current appearance is not indicative of capability," Betty insisted. "I am required to log this incident with galactic authorities." "Give me 48 hours, Owen said. "Just 2 days to figure out what they need. Then you can send whatever reports you want." Betty was silent for a moment, processing. "You modified my ethical protocols 3 years ago to prioritize preservation of life. I cannot refuse this request without violating those protocols. However, I must warn you that Dravik authorities typically execute non-Dravik who interact with their young." Noted. Owen pulled up the fragments of data he'd recovered from the crashed ship. Most of it was medical information, written in a language that Betty's translator struggled with. He pieced together what he could understand. Dravik hatchlings needed high heat, around 40 degrees Celsius. They required minerals, particularly iron and copper, mixed with protein. Their metabolism ran fast, meaning they needed to eat every few hours. Without proper care, they would die within 3 days. Owen rated his cargo hold. He found mineral supplements meant for terraforming projects and protein paste used for emergency rations. He mixed them together in ratios that seemed reasonable, creating a thick gray sludge that smelled awful. The hatchlings would probably hate it, but it was better than nothing. He returned to find all 3 awake and making distressed chirps. They moved in circles on the table, clearly searching for their mother. The sound they made went straight to Owen's heart, a universal cry of children who'd lost everything. "Hey now," Owen said softly, approaching with the food mixture. "I know this isn't what you're used to, but let's try, okay?" The blue hatchling noticed him first. It stopped pacing and tilted its head, studying Owen with remarkable focus. Those eyes held intelligence that unsettled him. This wasn't some simple animal. Owen offered a fingerful of the paste. The blue one sniffed cautiously, then its tongue darted out. The paste disappeared. The hatchling's eyes widened, and it chirped excitedly, pressing forward for more. That got the attention of the other 2. The gray one approached next, still wary but clearly hungry. It took the paste from Owen's hand with surprising gentleness. Even the copper hatchling crept forward, unable to resist the smell of food. Owen spent the next hour feeding them, watching as their energy returned. Their scales brightened slightly. Their movements became stronger. When they'd eaten enough, the blue one climbed onto Owen's lap and curled up, falling asleep immediately. The gray one settled beside his leg. The copper hatchling stayed at arm's length, but no longer looked terrified. "Betty, are you recording their behavior?" Owen asked. "Yes. I have found references in the Galactic database. The blue one appears to be exhibiting pack leader traits. The gray one shows scout characteristics. The copper one displays typical Omega positioning within Dravic family structures. They already have roles. They're barely a few weeks old. Dravic are born with instinctive social programming. It is part of what makes them successful apex predators. They understand hierarchy and cooperation from hatching." Owen gently stroked the blue hatchling's head. Its scales were surprisingly soft, not yet hardened into armor. The baby made a contented rumble without waking. "I need names for them. Can't keep calling them by colors. Dravic names are complex sound patterns that human vocal cords cannot reproduce. Then they get human names until they can tell me different." Owen thought for a moment. "Blue. That one stays blue. It fits." He looked at the gray one. "Ash. Like gray ash." The copper hatchling peeked up at him. "And your copper." "Simple enough." Betty's tone shifted, becoming urgent. "Owen, I am detecting an incoming vessel on long-range scanners. Configuration matches Dravic military design." They responded to the distress beacon. Owen's blood went cold. "How long until they arrive?" 17 hours at current speed." "Can we outrun them?" "Negative. Dravic ships are significantly faster than civilian salvage vessels. They will intercept us regardless of course changes." Owen looked down at the three hatchlings, now all sleeping peacefully. Blue's tiny claws gripped his shirt. Ash had rolled onto its back, wings spread out. Copper finally looked calm, its breathing slow and even. "Then we don't run," Owen decided. "We meet them honestly. I found their people dead and saved the babies. That has to count for something. Dravic law is very different from human law. Mercy is not a guarantee. Maybe not, but I made a promise to their mother." Owen carefully gathered the sleeping hatchlings, moving them to a heated nest he'd built from blankets and thermal packs. They curled together instinctively, a tangle of soft scales and gentle breathing. He settled into the pilot's chair and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a warship full of angry dragons was coming for him. They would probably kill him for touching their young. But looking back at those three peaceful faces, Owen found he didn't regret his choice. Some promises were worth keeping, no matter the cost. 16 hours passed like a countdown to execution. Owen barely slept, spending most of his time with the hatchlings. They had adapted to the ship remarkably well, turning the medical bay into their territory. Blue had claimed the highest spot on the supply cabinet, watching everything with alert eyes. Ash explored constantly, investigating every corner and device with scientific curiosity. Copper stayed close to the heated nest, but ventured out when the others did, following their lead. Owen discovered they learned frightening fast. He'd shown Blue once how to activate the door panel by touching it in a specific pattern. Within an hour, all three could open and close the door themselves. They'd turned it into a game, taking turns until Betty had to disable the automatic function to preserve power. "Their neural development is accelerating," Betty reported. "Standard Dravic hatchlings don't achieve this level of problem-solving for at least 6 months. The trauma of losing their mother may have triggered advanced survival adaptations. Or they're just really smart," Owen said, watching Ash try to dismantle a medical scanner with careful precision. "Hey, leave that alone. That's expensive." Ash looked at him, made a noise that sounded almost apologetic, and abandoned the scanner. Instead, the hatchling brought Owen a torn piece of cloth from the nest and dropped it at his feet, waiting expectantly. "You want me to fix it?" Owen picked up the cloth. It had been part of a blanket that Copper had accidentally shredded with sharp claws. He tied the pieces back together in a simple knot. Ash chirped happily, grabbed the cloth, and returned to the nest to show Copper. Blue descended from the cabinet and landed on Owen's shoulder, a position the hatchling had adopted as its personal perch. The weight was getting significant as Blue grew. Owen could feel the baby's warmth through his shirt and the gentle grip of claws that could easily pierce his skin but never did. "You're getting heavy," Owen told Blue. The hatchling responded by rubbing its head against his cheek, making that rumbling purr sound that meant contentment. That Betty's alert tone shattered the peaceful moment. Dravik vessel entering visual range. "They are hailing us." Owen's heart hammered. "Open the channel." The view screen activated, showing a Dravik that made Owen's throat go dry. The creature filled the entire frame, covered in dark purple scales etched with scars. Its eyes burned gold, ancient and furious. When it spoke, the translator rendered the words in a deep voice that promised violence. "Human vessel, you are carrying stolen Dravik property. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." "I didn't steal anything," Owen said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I found a crashed ship. The mother was dying. She asked me to save her children." The Dravik's eyes narrowed. "You dare claim a Dravik mother entrusted her offspring to an alien? You compound theft with lies. I have video logs from the crash site. I can show you. You will show me nothing. You will surrender the hatchlings and submit to judgment for violating the Apex protection laws." The Dravik leaned closer to the camera. "I am High Guardian Rawl of the Third Fleet. I have executed 17 aliens for crimes against Dravik young. You will be the 18th. The transmission ended. Owen sat frozen, watching the massive warship approach. It dwarfed his salvage vessel, bristling with weapons that could vaporize him in seconds. Blue sensed his fear and nuzzled his neck, making worried chirping sounds. The other two appeared in the doorway, drawn by their siblings' distress. They gathered around Owen, pressing close, offering what comfort they could. "Betty, send them all the video logs from the crash site. Everything. Maybe if they see what really happened. Transmitting now." "Owen, I calculate your survival probability at less than 8%. That's higher than I expected." Owen picked up all three hatchlings, holding them close. They'd grown in just 2 days, their scales hardening, their movements becoming stronger. But they were still babies, still vulnerable. "Listen to me, all of you. Big scary dragons are coming. They're your people. They'll take care of you better than I can." Blue made a defiant sound and gripped Owen's shirt tighter. Ash pressed against his chest. Copper wrapped tiny wings around his arm. "I know," Owen whispered. "I don't want to leave you either. But I'm not what you need. You need your own kind." The docking clamps engaged with metallic thunder. Owen heard heavy footsteps approaching through his ship. He set the hatchlings down gently and stood to face whatever came next. The three babies positioned themselves between Owen and the door, tiny bodies puffed up in threat displays that would have been adorable if the situation wasn't so dire. The door exploded inward. 4 massive Dravik warriors entered, weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats. They froze when they saw the hatchlings. One of them made a sound of pure shock. Then High Guardian Rawl entered, barely fitting through the doorway. His presence filled the room with predatory power. His golden eyes swept the scene, stopping on the 3 hatchlings standing guard over Owen. Rawl took 1 step forward. Blue hissed, a sound too large for such a small body. Ash spread tiny wings in a threat display. Even Copper stood firm, trembling but refusing to back down. They were protecting Owen. The ancient Dravik's expression shifted from fury to something Owen couldn't read. Rawl knelt slowly, bringing his massive head down to the hatchling's level. He spoke in their language, a series of rumbles and chirps that the translator didn't process. Blue responded, still positioned protectively. The conversation continued, the tiny hatchling communicating with a massive warrior in ways Owen couldn't understand. Finally, Rawl stood and turned those burning eyes on Owen. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of centuries. "Show me everything. Every moment since you found them. The hatchlings say you speak truth, but I must see for myself." Owen released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Follow me." It wasn't execution. Not yet. But as Rawl's warriors surrounded him and the hatchlings chirped their worry, Owen knew the real judgment was just beginning. The ship's common room had become an impromptu courtroom. Rawl sat coiled in the center, his massive form radiating control power. His 4 warriors stood at attention, hands near weapons. Owen stood before them, feeling like prey being evaluated by apex predators. The three hatchlings refused to leave his side despite repeated commands from the warriors. Betty projected the video logs onto the main screen. Rawl watched in silence as Owen's helmet camera showed the crashed ship, the dying mother, the desperate plea. The translator's broken words filled the room. Mercy for them. The moment where the mother pushed her babies toward Owen. Her final breath. Owen watched Rawl's face for any reaction. The ancient Dravik remained motionless, but his eyes reflected something that might have been pain. When the video showed Owen carefully feeding the hatchlings, one of the warriors made a low, rumbling sound of surprise. He uses proper mineral ratios, the warrior said in disbelief. How did a human know? I didn't, Owen admitted. I guess based on data fragments from the crashed ship. I was just trying to keep them alive. The videos continued. Owen wrapping the hatchlings in heated blankets. Blue claiming his shoulder. Ash learning to open doors. Copper finally trusting enough to eat from his hand. Hours of footage showing a human struggling to care for alien babies with nothing but determination and improvised solutions. When the projection ended, Rawl spoke. You did not restrain them. You allowed them freedom of your ship. They're children, not prisoners. They are Dravik. Even as hatchlings, they could have killed you dozens of times in the past 2 days. Owen glanced down at Blue, perched as always on his shoulder. The hatchling met his eyes and made a soft chirping sound. They never tried. They knew I was trying to help. Impossible, one warrior said. Hatchlings lack the capacity to judge intent. Then explain why they defended him when we arrived, Rawl said quietly. Explain why they refuse to come to us now, their own kind, and instead choose to remain with an alien. The warriors had no answer. Rawl's eyes fixed on Owen with uncomfortable intensity. The mother's name was Rawl. She was my brother's daughter. I have been searching for her for 6 months, since she fled the civil war consuming our homeworld. Owen's chest tightened. I'm sorry for your loss. She was trying to reach the sanctuary colonies. Rawl continued. Places where Dravik who reject the violence can live in peace. These hatchlings are all that remain of my brother's bloodline. His massive head lowered toward Owen. You saved them when you could have fled, when you could have ignored the distress call. Why? Because a dying mother begged me to. Because they were babies who needed help. Does there need to be another reason? Yes, Rawl said. Most species fear what they don't understand. Dravik are feared throughout the galaxy. We are powerful, dangerous, territorial. Yet you took 3 predators onto your ship without hesitation. Owen thought about that. My grandmother used to rescue animals back on Earth. Dogs that had been abused, wild creatures that were injured. Everyone said she was crazy, that they were too dangerous. But she said fear and pain look the same in every species. When I saw those babies crying over their mother, I didn't see dangerous predators. I saw children who'd lost everything. One of the warriors spoke up. Guardian, there's precedent for this. The ancient laws speak of blood bonds formed through mercy. When one saves a Dravik life at risk to their own, a debt is created. The mercy laws haven't been invoked in 300 years, another warrior argued. Rawl silenced them with a gesture. He extended one massive claw toward Blue. The hatchling hissed, pressing closer to Owen. Come, little one. I am family. I am safety. Blue didn't move. Ash and Copper flanked Owen's legs, their message clear. They weren't leaving. Rawl withdrew his claw. When he spoke again, his voice carried weight of command. I am invoking the right of testimony. The hatchlings will speak for themselves. They can't talk yet, Owen said. Not in words you understand, but they communicate perfectly well to us. Rawl made a series of complex sounds, and to Owen's surprise, all 3 hatchlings responded. The conversation continued for several minutes, a flowing exchange of chirps, rumbles, and growls that Betty's translator struggled to process. Finally, Rawl turned back to Owen. They have bonded with you. Blue claims you as primary guardian. Ash declares you as teacher. Copper names you as protector. This is highly unusual. Dravik hatchlings typically bond only with their mother in the first year. What does that mean? It means, Rawl said slowly, that separating them from you now would cause severe psychological damage. Bonded hatchlings that are torn from their guardian often refuse to eat. Some die from grief. Owen felt the weight of those words. So what happens now? Rawl stood to his full height, and the warriors snapped to attention. I am faced with an impossible situation. The law says these hatchlings must be raised by Dravik. But the mercy laws say a life debt must be honored. The hatchlings themselves choose you. And I cannot deny that you have cared for them better than any non-Dravik has right to. Guardian, you cannot seriously consider, one warrior began. Silence. Rawl's voice cracked like thunder. I have decided. Owen Carter, you will accompany us to the sanctuary colony. You will continue to care for these hatchlings under Dravik's supervision. One of our caretakers will teach you proper methods. You will live among us until the hatchlings reach maturity and can choose their own path. Owen's mind reeled. Live with you? For how long? Dravik reached maturity at 10 years. You will have that decade to prove yourself worthy of the trust these hatchlings place in you. Rawl's eyes burned into him. Fail, and you will face judgment. Succeed, and you will have achieved something no alien has ever done. You will have raised Dravik young. Blue chirped happily and rubbed against Owen's cheek. Ash climbed onto his other shoulder. Copper pressed against his leg, finally brave enough to touch him directly. Owen looked at the 3 babies depending on him and made his choice. When do we leave? The journey to the sanctuary colony took 5 days. Owen's small salvage ship traveled in formation with Rawl's warship, surrounded by protective fighters. The Dravik had assigned a supervisor to travel with Owen, a younger female named Scylla who specialized in hatchling development. Scylla was nothing like the warriors. Her scales were lighter, almost silver, and her manner carried scientific curiosity rather than military precision. She'd brought equipment, supplies, and an attitude of deep skepticism about Owen's abilities. They should be eating solid protein by now, Scylla said, watching Owen prepare the mineral paste. You're keeping them on infant mixture too long. They seem healthy, Owen defended. They're surviving. There's a difference. Scylla pulled out chunks of what looked like raw meat from a cooling unit. Dravik are obligate carnivores. At this stage, they need actual flesh to develop properly. Blue, Ash, and Copper perked up immediately at the smell. They abandoned their nest and crowded around Scylla, chirping with excitement. She distributed the meat with practiced efficiency, and the hatchlings tore into it with enthusiasm Owen had never seen before. Point taken. Owen admitted. Scylla's expression softened slightly. You did well with limited knowledge. Most aliens wouldn't have tried at all. But now you must learn the proper way, or their development will suffer. Over the next days, Scylla taught Owen everything. Dravik hatchlings needed not just food, but challenges. Their minds required constant stimulation, or they became aggressive. She brought puzzles designed for young Dravik. Complex boxes that required problem-solving to open and reveal treats inside. Ash solved the first puzzle in under 3 minutes, shocking even Scylla. Blue competed with Ash, trying to solve each puzzle faster. Copper watched both siblings carefully, learning from their attempts before trying the puzzles alone. The smallest hatchling took longer, but showed remarkable memory, never making the same mistake twice. This is unprecedented development speed, Scylla said, recording their progress. Hatchlings raised by their mothers don't show this level of cognitive function for months. Your constant interaction with them has accelerated their learning. Is that good or bad? Unknown. We've never seen it before. Scylla observed as Blue brought Owen a solved puzzle, clearly seeking approval. Owen praised the hatchling, and Blue's whole body language radiated pride. You're teaching them more than just survival. You're teaching them to value achievement and learning for its own sake. The 4th day brought unexpected danger. Alarms screamed through both ships as unknown vessels appeared on scanners. Pirates, Betty identified them. For ships, heavily armed, closing fast. Rawl's voice came over communications. Owen, get the hatchlings to your ship's safe room. Now. Owen grabbed all 3 babies and ran. Blue sensed the urgency and climbed onto his back. Ash and Copper ran alongside him as he sealed them in the reinforced storage compartment Betty had designated as emergency shelter. The hatchlings made distress sounds, not understanding why they were being confined. "Stay here," Owen commanded. "Don't come out until I get you." He sealed the door and rushed to help Scylla secure the medical bay. Through the view screen, he saw the pirate ships closing in. They were smaller than Rawl's warship, but moved with practiced coordination. "They're slavers," Scylla said, her voice tight with fear. "They capture rare creatures to sell on black markets. Dravik hatchlings would be worth millions. They're not getting them." Owen moved to the weapons locker, pulling out the plasma rifle he kept for emergencies. "You're a salvage operator. You're not trained for combat. I've survived this long. I'll manage." Owen checked the rifle's charge. "Can you fight?" "I'm a scientist, not a warrior." "Then stay behind me and protect the hatchlings if anyone gets past." The first pirate boarding pod struck Owen's ship like a hammer. Metal shrieked as cutting torches began working on the hull. Owen positioned himself at the corridor leading to the cargo bay where the hatchlings were hidden. His hands shook, but his resolve didn't waver. The hull breached. For figures in combat, armor poured through, weapons raised. They saw Owen and laughed. "One human? This will be easy." The lead pirate advanced. "Move aside or die. We're just here for the cargo." "The cargo isn't for sale." "Wasn't asking." The pirate fired. Owen dove behind a support beam as plasma bolts scorched the air. He returned fire, clipping one pirate's shoulder. The others spread out, using professional tactics to flank him. Owen knew he was outmatched. These were trained killers, and he was one man with a rifle. But between him and those hatchlings was a line he wouldn't let anyone cross. He fired again, forcing the pirates to take cover. Then he heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. The hatchlings were crying in the safe room, terrified by the weapon's fire. Their distress calls echoed through the ship. The pirates heard it too. "There they are. Cargo bay. Move." "No." Scylla stepped into the corridor beside Owen, holding a shock baton. Her scientific calm had been replaced by fierce determination. "They are children, not cargo." "Stupid alien." A pirate fired at Scylla. Owen threw himself in front of her, taking the blast on his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body. He fell, the rifle clattering away. The pirates advanced. Owen tried to rise, but his shoulder wouldn't respond. Scylla stood over him, baton raised, ready to die defending babies that weren't even her responsibility. Then the safe room door exploded outward. 3 small shapes burst through, moving faster than Owen had ever seen them. Blue reached the lead pirate first, tiny claws finding gaps in armor with surgical precision. Ash hit the next one low, wings spread in a terrifying display that looked far larger than the hatchling's actual size. Even Copper fought, biting and clawing with desperate fury. The pirates screamed, trying to shake off creatures that fought with intelligence and teamwork beyond their size. One pirate fell, then another. The remaining 2 fled back through the hull breach, abandoning their mission that Rawl's voice boomed through communications. Pirate vessels destroyed. All boarding parties terminated. Owen reports status. Blue climbed onto Owen's chest, nuzzling his face with desperate concern. Ash and Copper pressed close, making worried sounds. Their tiny bodies were covered in scratches, but they'd fought like warriors to protect him. "We're okay," Owen managed despite the pain. "The hatchlings saved us." Scylla stared at the 3 babies in shock. "They left safety to defend you." That level of loyalty, that tactical thinking. They're not even 3 weeks old. Owen wrapped his good arm around all 3 hatchlings, holding them close as they trembled from adrenaline and fear. They'd risked everything for him, just as he'd risked everything for them. The bond went both ways now. The sanctuary colony appeared like a jewel against the darkness of space. The planet was smaller than Earth, covered in purple forests and golden oceans. Rawl's ships approached slowly, transmitting clearance codes that allowed them past the defensive satellites orbiting the world. Owen sat in the medical bay, his shoulder wrapped in Dravik healing gel that Scylla had applied. The 3 hatchlings refused to leave his side, pressed against him as if afraid he might disappear. Blue kept licking his face, making worried sounds. Ash had positioned itself between Owen and the door, standing guard. Copper slept curled against his leg, exhausted from the battle. The colony will be very different from anything you've experienced, Scylla said as she checked his healing progress. Dravik society is complex. You'll be the first human to live among us. There will be resistance. I expected that, but there will also be respect. What those hatchlings did, fighting to protect you, has spread through the fleet. Warriors are calling them the Bridge Brood, the ones who connect two species. Scylla met his eyes. You changed something fundamental. Dravik don't trust outsiders, but you made 3 of our young trust you completely. That matters. The ships entered atmosphere, descending through clouds that glowed with bioluminescent particles. The colony came into view, and Owen's breath caught. It wasn't a city in the human sense. Instead, massive crystal structures grew from the ground like organic formations, connected by living bridges that pulsed with light. Dravik of all sizes moved through the spaces, some flying, others walking on powerful legs. They landed in a central plaza where hundreds of Dravik had gathered. Owen saw hatchlings of various ages, juveniles testing their wings, and massive elders whose scales carried the patina of centuries. All of them stared as Rawl's ship opened its doors. Owen stepped out, carrying all 3 hatchlings since they refused to walk on their own. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Gasps, rumbles of conversation, some aggressive postures from warriors who didn't like seeing their young in alien hands. An ancient Dravik moved through the crowd, and everyone parted respectfully. She was enormous, covered in scales that had faded to almost white with age. Her eyes held wisdom that made even Rawl bow his head in deference. "I am Elder Vara," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I lead this sanctuary. Rawl has told me of you, Owen Carter. Told me of the impossible thing you've done. I just helped some babies," Owen said. "You did far more than that." Vara approached slowly, studying the 3 hatchlings. Blue, Ash, and Copper. Human names for Dravik young. This alone would cause controversy. But Rawl tells me they fought for you. Defended you against armed attackers when they could have stayed safe. "They're brave," Owen said. "Probably too brave for their own good." Vara made a sound that might have been laughter. "Indeed. May I see them closer?" Owen nodded. Vara extended one massive claw, and Blue hissed defensively. The ancient elder didn't seem offended. Instead, she spoke in the Dravik language, a long, flowing series of sounds. Blue responded hesitantly, then with more confidence. Ash joined the conversation. Even Copper added small chirps. When the exchange ended, Vara turned to the assembled crowd. "The hatchlings have spoken. They claim Owen as guardian, teacher, and protector. They refuse separation. Under our oldest laws, the mercy bond is recognized. Owen Carter will remain with us, raising these young until they reach independence." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some sounded approving. Others clearly disagreed. A large warrior stepped forward. "Elder, with respect, he is human. He cannot teach them our ways." "Then we will teach him our ways," Varus said simply. "And perhaps he will teach us something in return." When was the last time our young showed such loyalty, such willingness to fight for another? These qualities are what we claim to value. Yet they've bonded with an outsider who showed them simple kindness. She turned back to Owen. "You will have a dwelling near the hatchling grounds. Scylla will continue as supervisor. You will learn our language, our customs, our methods of child rearing. In return, you will help us understand why these 3 have developed so rapidly under your care." "I accept," Owen said without hesitation. The months that followed were the strangest of Owen's life. His dwelling was a crystal structure that naturally maintained perfect temperature. Blue, Ash, and Copper claimed it immediately, dividing the space into territories while still sleeping together in one large nest. Owen learned the Dravik language, struggling with sounds his human vocal cords weren't designed to make. The hatchlings found his attempts hilarious, chirping with laughter when he mispronounced words. But they were also his best teachers, patiently repeating phrases until he understood. Other hatchlings in the colony began approaching, curious about the human. Blue took charge, introducing siblings and organizing play sessions. Ash created games that mixed human and Dravik rules. Copper, slowly coming out of its shell, discovered a talent for mediating disputes between young Dravik. The adult Dravik watched in amazement as their young interacted with Owen without fear. Some began asking questions. How did he earn their trust? What made humans different? Could other species be trusted too? 6 months after arriving, Owen stood in the Crystal Plaza watching Blue, Ash, and Copper play with a dozen other young Dravik. They'd grown significantly, their scales hardening into armor, their wings gaining strength. But they still came running when he called, still curled around him at night, still trusted him completely. Vara approached, her ancient eyes warm. You've changed the colony, Owen. Before you came, we taught our young that only Dravik could be trusted, that the galaxy was full of enemies. But watching you with those three, seeing the bonds you've built, our people are questioning old assumptions. I just love them, Owen said. That's all I did. Sometimes, Vara said softly, love is the most revolutionary act of all. A message arrived from the Galactic Council that evening. Humanity's diplomatic status had been upgraded. The Dravik had formally requested cultural exchange programs. Other species wanted to learn about the human who'd bridged the gap between apex predators and the wider galaxy. Owen deleted the message. He had more important things to do. Blue was calling him, wanting help with a new puzzle. Ash had found something interesting in the forest. Copper needed reassurance before trying to fly for the first time. 10 years seemed like a long time. But watching his 3 charges grow, learning and teaching in equal measure, Owen realized he'd found something more valuable than any salvage haul. He'd found family in the most unexpected place and proven that mercy given freely could change worlds.